Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we discuss how peer mentoring can help to enhance the student experience at your university. My name is Katie Mouton, and I will be your host for the day. We're really excited about this topic, and we're even more excited that you could be here. All right, let's get started. I just want to run through the agenda really quick to let you know kind of the conversation that we're going to be having in the order we're going to be having it in. So first, we're going to start by talking about the new student experience. So with the pandemic and everything that entails, as you know, the student experience has changed quite a bit. So we're actually going to be talking to a current student, which is one of our panelists, and she's going to be sharing some of her experience with us. Next, we're going to talk about mentoring for students and how that can help with the student experience that everyone's going through. And then we're going to specifically talk about peer mentoring and how that enhances that experience, and then how utilizing software for your peer mentoring program can help to enhance it. All right, before we do that, I want to go through a couple of housekeeping notes. So this discussion is being recorded, and I will be sending it out to everyone via email later today, so keep your eye out for that, and feel free to forward it out to anyone that you'd like to share the webinar with. Everyone has been muted, but we do encourage you to participate through the chat function. So if you see on the GoToWebinar toolbar that you have on your screen, there's going to be a box that either says chat or questions. Feel free, any comments or questions that you have, to put them in there. We are saving some time at the end of the webinar for your questions, but you don't have to wait till the end. If you have a question that pops up as we're talking, feel free to put it in there. We'll see that and we'll make sure that we get to it. All right, so we do want to introduce ourselves to everyone. As I said in the beginning, my name is Katie Mouton. I am the digital marketing specialist at Insala, and I'm just going to go through and ask all of the other speakers to introduce themselves. So let's start with Nick Jones.
Thank you, Katie. Well, my name's Nick Jones, and I work in Insala's sales and account management team. And I work on a daily basis with organizations running mentoring programs. I'm interested in the DNA that makes them successful, and what we can do to make mentoring deliver for your organization.
All right, thank you, Nick. Let's move on to Jessica.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Hamilton. I am a digital marketing intern here at Insala, and I am in my final semester at the University of North Texas. So really excited, about to graduate, final week. So I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you, Jessica. And last but certainly not least, Ryan.
Yep, hello, Ryan Ward here. I work for Insala based in our London office, and I've been lucky enough to work with some large university clients and some smaller ones. And there's been some really interesting things we found out in our time working with those universities that we want to share with you today. Happy to be here.
All right, thank you, everyone. Okay, so as we said, we all work at Insala, so I did want to talk about Insala just for a minute for those of you that aren't familiar with us. So Insala is entering into its 25th year in the talent development sector. We're really excited about this anniversary, and we have the knowledge and experience to help you engage, develop, transition, and connect all the people at your organization through our software solutions. So we have resources for you in career management, mentoring, coaching, career transition, and alumni. Now, we're going to be talking a little bit about our mentoring software solution later in the webinar, but if you're interested in learning about any of our other solutions, you can definitely do that by going to our website at www.insala.com. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to pass this over to Ryan. Ryan, can you tell everyone a little bit about what's going on with the new student experience?
Yeah, thank you, Katie. And I don't think it's going to be a particular surprise to anyone on the call today that things have really shifted, not just in the student world, the university, but globally due to the recent pandemic. So this means that we need to approach things in different ways. We can't continue to do things, keep our heads down and march along the same way we have been. We need to sort of wake up and smell the coffee around being able to do things slightly differently. For students, this means changing some things that are going to relate to learning, going to relate to experience and well-being at a university, as well as academic achievement. Limitations around the number of classes that you're able to attend campus is massively reduced, if any. The interactions with your friends, with your peers, with your professors, has all been pretty much cut to zero from a face-to-face standpoint. And any events that you may have been having to sort of get that kind of interaction has been cut down as well. So it's still important that people understand there is potential to connect with each other, but it's just going to be done in a different way. I think it's brilliant that we've got Jessica on the line today who can really help us talk through some of these things and understand from a student's perspective, what the experience is really like at the moment. So Jess, I was wondering, how have you felt sort of over the past, almost a year now, around the student experience? What are your thoughts and feelings towards it so far?
Well, it's definitely been different. I mean, everyone at this point is pretty much working from home, and with that comes learning virtually. And something that I found really difficult is because we don't have those class meetings every day, we're not meeting with our peers. There's this feeling of being lonely and isolated. Many of us live alone, or if they are on campus, we're still meeting virtually, so we can't always get that same opportunity for connection. So there's this longing to be connected with everyone and still have this sense of normal, even though obviously it's new, but just craving for that feedback and that conversation that you get. So learning is a little bit different this year, and we're really trying to connect and find different ways to bring that back.
Yeah, absolutely. And mentoring is a really good way to do that. And if you just skip onto the next slide here, Katie, it's really important to remember that most people here on the call today and listening to this would have been involved in some form of mentoring program in their lives that has really sort of deflated them around mentoring. And quite often that is in an educational environment. When you join a new club or institution, you might be paired up with a mentor. And this stat here is really interesting. 2 in 10 college students said that mentors encourage them to achieve their goals, which of course is not particularly good, but also not particularly surprising. The reason we're sharing this stat, we don't want to be negative around mentoring. We just want to share that there is a huge amount of opportunity out there to do it properly. And we've seen it done properly in many different formats before. And, this webinar today is really just trying to reinforce some of the simple tools, processes, and ways to approach mentoring at a university from a peer-to-peer standpoint and much more, so that it will be successful. I think that it has a bad rap sometimes, and we really want to sort of debust some myths around, the success levels here, because we've really seen it be successful. And success comes in many different formats, and many different programs operate in different universities. So I'm just going to hand over to Nick, who's going to talk around some of the different types of mentoring that we see, some of the success we see on engagement levels via these different types of programs, and maybe some of these items will hit home for you here around the kind of program you're running at your university. Nick?
That's great. Thank you, Ryan. It's very interesting to discussing the current situation and the experience of a student, because what I sort of feel is that engagement could really hit in a significant way moving forwards, and you might start to see students questioning the student experience altogether. So it's certainly very challenging times. I think that does present a little bit of risk for universities in ensuring that they're still hitting things such as course retention rates and getting people through the course and proving and providing that satisfaction is there. So it's a very interesting conversation. But I mean, in terms of the types of mentoring that we see, there are a few different ways that students can experience mentoring, and they might experience one of these or a combination. But the programs that we work on typically feature one of these, and it could be on the left. We see hierarchical mentoring, which is where there is a junior student and a senior faculty member or advisor or staff member. And this is more in line with sort of traditional mentoring, where there is a junior mentee and a senior mentor, and that knowledge transfer really focuses on that junior individual having knowledge imparted to them from in that sort of one-to-one setting. So that's a very popular method and type of mentoring. We also see corporate mentoring. This is a big area that seems to grow bigger every year, with organizations wanting to boost their CSR footprint and perhaps give more back to the communities, and also promote research links between industry and academia. So this can also take the form of mentoring by a professional in an organization to provide employability advice for a mentee. And this is incredibly important for a mentee in a university course going into that vocational training and thinking about how to pay back their sort of increasingly large student fees. Employability is a huge area, and there's a big incentive for that for a mentee to go on these courses and get corporate mentoring. And the same can be said for the one-to-one hierarchical mentoring as well. With the final area, peer mentoring, there sometimes needs to be a little bit more of an incentive to get people to mentor in that context, because the mentor typically has about a year's worth of experience and is perhaps a senior student that's already gone through the process. So it's much more of a balanced level of seniority in that mentoring pair. That's really how peer mentoring is defined. And these are sort of several areas we've seen. We're going to focus on peer mentoring though. I'm going to hand back to Jessica to give us a little bit more insight into her experience of peer mentoring. And just some insights from there.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And I have had experience in all of those different forms of mentoring throughout college, but peer mentoring happens to be the one that I have the most experience in. I am currently in a peer mentoring relationship, and I just wanted to share a few of my responsibilities. One of the biggest things that I do as a peer mentor is I share my own personal experience and I offer my mentee new perspectives. You know, we're always trying to find different ways of trying to attack a problem or doing assignments, and especially while we're in this virtual space right now, I had a mentee reach out to me. He was concerned. He had never done virtual classes before. I have done e-learning for as far as I can remember. So I was able to take that little moment and identify that he needed some help in being successful in his courses. So I walked him through what I have done and some areas that I was able to excel in. Additionally, he didn't know how to reach out to a professor. He was a little uncomfortable with the idea, and I was just able to reach out and facilitate that initial contact with that professor and get him comfortable to the point where he felt like he didn't need me anymore, that he was able to continue that relationship on with that faculty member. In addition to that, we encourage connections on campus and with the student population, but as you know, we're not on campus right now. So I personally send out messages. I try to connect them to different groups and people, different events that they can participate in, just so that they still feel like they're getting that excellent student experience. And then lastly, probably the most important thing we do is provide them with academic assistance, oh, words are hard, and overall guidance in balancing school and life. We're constantly talking about how there needs to be a work and life balance while we're working from home. Students are going through the same thing. A lot is changing right now, and they need to be able to step away from the computer, focus on their mental health. And again, we're lonely. A lot of us are social, even if we're introvert, extrovert, just making sure that that part of their life is balanced. So those are just a few of the responsibilities that we take on as a peer mentor. And I've seen so many benefits in my own mentorship and everyone else's that's in the program. And it's just something that's really reconnected that student experience.
Great. Thanks so much, Jessica. That's fantastic. Yeah. And I've just got sort of a previous point, Nick, just on some of the comments just around the different programs you're running, because I think it's important for our audience to understand that, you know, you're going to have to be realistic about the expectations you set if you're setting up these programs, and all of them will have different kinds of engagement levels, different kinds of interest levels, and different kinds of commitment from mentors and mentees within them. Nick, in the time that we've been working together, how do you feel the engagement differs between the programs that you've said there, the hierarchical mentoring, peer mentoring, and corporate mentoring?
Yeah, well, if I had to sort of analyze it per program type, it's certainly the corporate mentoring that seems to get oversubscribed, and there's a huge demand for mentees for that sort of real life guidance in their careers, because I think it really does provide a huge boost in employability. So, if anything, those sorts of programs have to go through quite a lot of pre-screening, pre-qualification. So there isn't that problem of getting engagement. People will generally be incentivized enough to engage. The same can be said to be true for the hierarchical mentoring itself as well, because the people that sign up for that do tend to really see the value. And I think it's not just for mentees. There is a huge value for mentors as well in being able to give something back. And also, there is also the fact that mentoring is a bit of a two-way relationship. There's always that osmosis of information and knowledge between the junior and the senior part of the relationship. So it's not too far behind corporate mentoring if you just have to rank them. For peer mentoring, now peer mentoring can be great, but it is a little bit more difficult to incentivize people to go through that process. And I think it's particularly the mentors that we're focusing on, because it's time out of their hectic schedule. It's just an additional thing they have to focus on on top of their studies. So we found that peer mentoring has been a little bit more tricky to get that engagement, but there are a number of things that we can do to incentivize people to sign up and become mentors. We do talk about some of them here, so I don't want to spoil that, but there are different sort of strategies that you can employ, perhaps giving qualifications or a certificate to show, or access to other benefits, or networking as part of that, as part of a reward for being a mentor. But yeah, we certainly see very variable engagement. It's really due to the nature and the context of the program, and the program type plays a big part in that, certainly. If that goes some way to answering your question, Ryan. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think in the time we've worked with university clients and mentors and mentees as well in these programs, we've seen this firsthand. We've seen the difference in these kind of programs, and you know, they all need to be interacted with in a slightly different way. I mean, people love to be part of corporate programs because students think they might get a job with a corporate partner, so there's likely to be more engagement. But sometimes you have to work a bit harder at pushing and trying to guide people in the right direction with some of the other programs. So it's important to bear that in mind. But I suppose that ties nicely onto benefits. And if students are engaged and happy, they usually really clearly understand the benefits that are available to them. So it's very much centered around giving the student the best experience possible. And then you, as a result, as a university or an educational establishment, can reap the rewards from that engagement level. Some really sort of key, interesting points here, just from my experience in working with a few different kinds of universities. I've been involved in increased academic achievement programs. So the whole reason of setting them up was to get better grades, get better scores, better GPAs for students. I think that it's very important to test the waters on this and know what you're doing to begin with. So make sure you measure, have all the good data of maybe a smaller pilot, test out mentoring, and understand what kind of improvement it has before you roll it out on academic achievement. The client I worked with had an overall academic achievement of 5% in the faculty that they piloted this with, which is really good. And then they rolled it out to larger numbers, hoping that this percentage would be amplified. So being able to prove that you've got some form of interest and some form of increased achievement is really good, and then rolling out past that point is something that I've seen that is really fantastic too. It's also a really good way to increase the retention of students, get people staying at university. But for the students' standpoint, it's really about a sense of community, giving people a place and home so they can feel like they're sharing information, feel like they're valued, feel like they're part of something bigger. And this, of course, is not relevant now more than ever, like we keep saying, for mental health reasons too. So having a mentor, maybe that isn't necessarily a mentor to support you from a personal standpoint, is a mentor to help you with maybe guidance around your course, what you should expect. But just through having a mentor partnership, you know, and strengthening that, you'll be surprised what kind of things will get discussed between these people. So the benefits of having a mentor, regardless of the program, is multifaceted. And that's obviously going to be really useful just for that connection reason, as Jessica will tell you. So core benefits, takeaways are students are the core focus. Universities can achieve what they want if the students are happy and they feel value in the program itself. If we skip on to the next slide here, we want to talk a little bit about how you actually go about implementing this and what you can do, some really simple steps to be able to get this going in an effective way. You know, we've seen a lot of great programs set up and a lot of not so great programs set up. So, you know, here's some shortcuts to how you can do this. Nick will talk you through the first few, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And you can see there's an awful lot of benefits to the to implementing mentoring. You might be thinking, well, this is great, but how do we actually go about it? And probably seems too good to be true, because it's really everything from evidence to improving academic achievement to increasing retention and helping create a network for engagement. So in terms of how we go about that and implement it, it's really important to get buy-in from the staff and faculty. You have to have a department and a staff that's committed to mentoring at all levels to be able to embed it and ensure that people are enthusiastic about following mentoring. Once that happens, things get much easier, and mentoring gains momentum and a bit of a mind of itself. It's also important to invite all students to participate. We see mentoring as a very inclusive activity, and you don't want to spend too much time pre-filtering or qualifying people who should or shouldn't be in the program. It's best to include as many people as possible, and it not only increases the range of potential mentor and mentee matches, but it does ensure that it isn't an elite or an exclusive activity, and it can get people involved much more easily that way. So we certainly recommend that. And going back to a previous point, how we incentivize peer mentoring, we found that providing assessments and training for students going through that process and being mentors is a very good way to boosting engagement. So this is a significant best practice that we'd have for implementing a peer mentoring program. So they are three I would recommend from what I've seen. Ryan, you've seen a few others, haven't you, that we can talk through here?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd just say on one of those points, Nick, for people on the line who are potentially thinking about setting up a program, but do actually want to target it at maybe a specific area inside their university. Maybe it relates to a faculty, maybe it relates to a corporate program. How do you think that people are best placed to be able to target this inside their university if they did want to get a little bit more specific about it?
Well, the best way to do that is really be focused and clear about what the program objectives are. So it could be a diversity and inclusion program. It could be more academically focused, or it could be students from a particular background or region. So there are different ways that you could obviously structure a program. So I would suggest having the objectives and the themes that are covered in that particular program quite targeted to that particular population. At the same time, we do recommend consolidating programs across an organization such as a university, because you can get little pockets of mentoring in silos, which are great, but they do add up to an enormous amount of administrator time in organizing these little pockets of mentoring. So there is an argument at the same time for consolidating more general programs, which are likely to be repeated across faculties and departments. And this is typically what we see with the sort of structures you get within a typical university. So yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can approach there, but it does come back to the program objectives, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, that leads me on to talk about sort of a few more points here, one of which is the matching strategy and how you approach that. As you start out, maybe you want to do a proof of concept in your university and just test out the matching, do it manually. That's absolutely fine, and you can continue to do that. Obviously, it's a better process if it's a smaller program and you know who's likely to be best paired with who. But it's important you get your criteria together. So What are you matching people on? For example, availability is a key one. So if you've got people who are incredibly busy, maybe you've got sort of people who are unable to meet face to face, that might be another key piece today. You need to work all these things in to be able to match people together, because if you don't think about the matching at the start, then partnerships are going to get off to likely not a very good start. So it's a really important thing you think about your criteria there. If you start this, just try and start it as early as possible for the mentees and mentors in their time at the university, just so people get a feel of, you know, the program, the culture. They can be involved in many programs during their time there, but it's a really nice way at orientation to get people together. An onboarding program is one of the most common types of programs at universities, because it's just a really good way to get people socialized with others at the university and sharing different things that, like Jess said, experiences that you may have learned as a mentor. It's also important that you make sure that you recognize the mentor's input here. You don't want to just get people getting involved with the program just because they want to do a nice thing. There will be a group of people who will offer their help because of that, but it's more likely that people get involved because you incentivize them. So if there's anything you can do to help them prove that they've been a mentor inside the university, and give them some form of recognition for that they can use and show an employer or something along those lines, it would be really good and great for your engagement level. Finally, the measurements, like all programs, you need to be able to constantly roll something out, to assess how it's gone, and then tweak it. So it's important that you understand the data involved. It's important that you understand what to change, and you don't just make changes for the sake of it. Also, you don't just want to not change anything. You want to constantly improve the program year on year. So 5, 6, 10 years down the line, it's in a place where it's got a really, really good reputation amongst other universities, and it's actually something you can use to recruit people as a tool moving onwards. So some really simple points there, just around best practices in implementing a mentoring program. Some of the other pieces we wanted to discuss today, and I'll pass back over to Nick here, is we provide mentoring software, and it's not necessarily for everyone. If you're starting out a smaller program for 25 people, sort of less than 25 people, it's potentially not something that you want to use. You might want to test the water with a smaller group and try things out that way. But as you grow and the different kinds of programs you've got, software is a great way to be able to track and measure and understand exactly what's going on with your program. So Nick, I'll pass over to you just to talk through some of these pieces here about what software can do for you.
Great, thank you, Ryan. I really want to focus on a couple of points here. One of the most important parts about having a successful mentoring relationship is finding the right match. So one of the really nice things our system can do, and it uses a very swish algorithm, like I'm not entirely sure how it works, but it manages to match people up based on their preferences, their backgrounds, and their learning styles, and a number of other data points and attributes that are important to how they wish to experience learning. So users can go in and select a mentor that really closely reflects their needs at the point of need, and then go and book an appointment and really get started with the mentoring from there. We have an online portal that we're showing you on the left-hand side here, and it really is as simple as logging into the portal and requesting an appointment with a mentor and taking it from there. So if you're thinking about how do we actually get a program that does this, this is how we do it. It's very simple, and it can be transformative in removing the admin burden of having numerous spreadsheets, numerous profiles, and trying to pair people together when you perhaps don't really know them personally. This is how you operate at scale, and it's more when you have more than 100 people, it really helps. In terms of reporting, we have live real-time metrics that you can use to ensure that all your programs are successful if you have more than one. You can also track relationship activity, so you can really get a lot closer to what the mentoring is doing and what's going on than you can without using mentoring software. So it's really a bit of a mousetrap or a fishing net with that's able to glean these insights into what mentoring is doing for your organization. Are there any key themes? Are there any tangible outcomes in terms of improvements and achieved goals. And the reporting can tell you all that at a click of a button. So it's very empowering. I think, Ryan, you've got a couple of points on the technology side as well, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And, these are some really key things in terms of, stuff you just wouldn't be able to do outside of the system well. I always say, what better metric to prove and show the success of your program than if people are achieving their goals and getting what they want out of the system. So this is a direct tool that allows mentors to collaborate with mentees to getting their goals. And once you're in a partnership, obviously the mentor can have visibility on them. You can report on percentage of completion of goals. You can report on how many goals are being added into the system, what type of goals are being added in, how many people are being assisted with their goals. So it really just gives you a good insight into how well things are moving on from an achievement standpoint, which is really sort of a very key thing for these programs. The final thing here is just around virtual communication, and this is something that we feel sort of very strongly about, and we've worked on recently, and we're coming out with some fresh tools next month on instant chat functionality, video conferencing functionality as well, which is going to obviously really help people who maybe don't have means to connect with each other. Maybe they don't have the contact details of each other. Maybe you're not allowed to provide that information as a university, but using the mentoring system as a central place to be able to communicate and, share resources, talk about different things live then and there is going to be something that's great for universities. So we think that will, be a really, really good level up in terms of what you can do here with these mentoring programs. And I just really finish on just a piece around, these kind of programs, peer-to-peer mentoring inside universities. There's been sort of a lot of bad rap around, do they actually work? Is it something that can be successful? We've all, a lot of us have been students previously and had bad experiences with them. But, I can tell you personally that the programs I've seen go really well have been so powerful and can actually go further than the university itself. It can be used as a recruitment tool for students who wanted to join. They can hear about the mentoring program as something that's really reputable. And just imagine being able to use that as a tool to grow the university, let alone develop people. And we've seen that many, many times happen before with people who really think about doing this properly. So, consider mentoring as a really core function inside your university and a great way to connect people, especially today.
All right. Thank you, Ryan, Nick, and Jessica. I think that was really insightful and very interesting. I know you shared a lot of information. So we do have some time for questions. If you have questions, please put those in the question box, and we'll get to those as soon as we can. While you're doing that, I do want to mention that all of our email addresses are on the screen right now. So if you go back and watch this recording and you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you about this. And email us anytime. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn. We're all on LinkedIn and we love to connect with people and network through that platform. All right, so we do have some questions coming in. All right, so first question, why have so many university mentoring programs been unsuccessful?
Yep, I'm happy to take this. I think that one of the reasons they haven't been successful is just because there's not really been clear set out objectives for the start. Maybe there's not been enough people driving the program. I think that, again, people give up on these kind of programs quite quickly. If you set out your objectives and your goals at the start, just like anything, what you want to achieve, make sure you keep taking a step back and assessing the program. You'll be able to move forward with something that is that's really successful. Aside from that, some really cool little tips. Incentivizing mentors is going to be very important. You don't want a group of eager mentees with no one to speak to. So different ways around you can do that is, recognizing them publicly for their input into the mentoring program. It's much better to be able to give them some form of documentation they can show, or maybe sort of a badge or something like that. However you want to get creative around it, there's different things you can do. But making sure that the mentors stay engaged with the program is definitely an important thing. Nick, or Jessica, would you add anything to that in terms of why you think that the programs aren't usually successful inside universities?
Well, I think one of the issues that universities have is getting mentoring embedded as something that is done across the whole university. So, and getting a process that people can easily understand and follow. So it's about getting it embedded. And one way that you can do that is simply by using technology, because the technology can support the process and guide people through the mentoring relationship without you having to do that individually. So it does automate that to a large extent. But it certainly speaks, I'd certainly reiterate what you've said, Ryan, is that mentoring has to be defined for a particular university in a particular context and culture. So if it doesn't hit the mark within the initial period, then things need to change, or else you do run the risk of having an unsuccessful program. So there's a phrase, time spent in reconnaissance is seldom wasted, that I think is quite appropriate and apt for setting up a mentoring program, that you really want to gauge stakeholders' feelings and get them on board and ensure that the mentoring program is hitting their needs before sort of locking it down and embedding that process and getting people to go through it. So yeah, they're just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, and to go along with what you guys said, I have been in a mentoring program where they just sent out an email and were like, okay, this is your mentor. And I had no idea what a mentoring program was at that point. I didn't know how to connect with my mentor. They just sent me her name and expected us to, I guess, start a relationship. So providing information to both mentors and mentees, because a lot of these students, this is their first time in an official mentoring program, and just giving them that information about how to set the goals, what's the purpose of the program, and how to really build that relationship. So I feel like that's one of the ways that they can be successful instead.
All right, thank you, everyone. We do have another question. What happens if we don't have the resources to dedicate to running a mentoring program?
That's a good question. I think you can start small and perhaps take a reduced sort of size cohort that makes it more manageable. So that's one thing that you can do. I think you do get efficiencies of scale by using technology. So if you have some resources, but you kind of want to spread it across a wider area, you can use a software tool to really help do that and engage more people, and in some ways democratize the service a little bit. So yeah, they're my thoughts. Perhaps start small and build up, because once you've seen the benefits of mentoring, you can really make a case for it with in terms of the return on investment you're likely to get, and express that in terms that it's the decision maker at your university will understand. So it can really grow year to year once you've got it started. So you can start small and build up momentum that way.
Yeah, it's also really important to understand that, why you're doing the program and what kinds of parts of the university are going to be interested in participating in it. So you might have a peer-to-peer arm to the program, which is obviously helping maybe students get better results. But then you might have a different part which will involve corporate organizations where there are working people in large organizations who are mentors to the students and helping them get sort of into work. So if you have different stakeholders who head up those different parts of the university, the mentoring program can draw in resources to help run it from different areas. So, the more you can think about how you can get this sort of concept of mentoring spread across the university for different functions and reasons, the more resources you're likely to attract.
All right, thank you, Nick and Ryan. I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. and we are almost at time, so we're going to go ahead and end it here. Again, if you have questions that come up later that you think of, or maybe you're watching the recording and you think of a question, feel free to reach out to any of us. We'd be happy to hear from you. I want to thank all of our speakers today for their time and sharing all this great information. And I want to thank all of you for attending. I hope you have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.